Mom, there's really no reason for you to come. It's just a work dinner. You'd feel out of place. Those were my daughter's words on my birthday. Not an invitation. A dismissal. I stood there in silence, staring at my phone, feeling the weight of those words hit like a punch to the gut. It was the first time she said it so clearly. But deep down, it wasn't the first time she'd made me feel that way. Like an old accessory, something you keep out of habit, but no longer need. That night, with the birthday candles still lit and no one there to sing to me, I decided to give myself the one gift I had never had the courage to accept. Freedom. If you've ever felt invisible inside your own family, if you've ever been pushed aside by the very people you put first, then stay with me until the end. Because this is the story of a woman who finally realized. Self-love begins the moment you stop begging for space in someone else's life. The carrot cake with chocolate frosting was perfect. The kitchen smelled like childhood. A white lace tablecloth, the same one my mother used on special occasions, was stretched across the dining table. There were flowers, a few quiet balloons, and a handwritten note that said, "Happy birthday, Mom." Written by me, for me. The table was set for three, me, my daughter Sophie, and silence. It was my 61st birthday. The first one I spent officially divorced. And somehow, the loneliest day of my life. Sophie had promised to come. She said she'd leave work early, that she had a gift for me. But at 6:30 p.m., I got a short text, the kind you send to cancel a meeting. "Hey Mom, something came up, office happy hour to celebrate some wins. Hope you understand. I'll stop by this weekend." I read it 3 times. Part of me had expected it. But another part of me still hoped to be a priority. I waited until 9. I lit the birthday candle myself. Closed my eyes and made a wish I'd never made before. May I learn to stop waiting for what others can't give. I blew out the candle. No birthday song. Just silent tears falling into my lap. My name is Margaret Dawson, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 61. And for 30 of those years, I was known only as Rob's wife and Sophie's mother. I met Rob when I was 28. I was a high school literature teacher. He was a logistics manager, assertive, ambitious, charming. We fell in love quickly. Married within the year. At first, everything felt promising. We dreamed of building a family, traveling the world, buying a house with a garden. But reality came before the garden ever did. When Sophie was born, my maternity leave turned into full-time motherhood. Rob said it was temporary. Just stay home until she's 2. Then you can go back to work, honey. 2 years turned into 5. Then 10. Every time I tried to return to work, Rob had a new excuse. Teaching barely pays. You'll spend more on clothes and gas. Sophie needs you right now. School is such a critical stage. We've all gotten used to you being home. You do everything so well. And I believed him. After all, raising a child, cooking, cleaning, managing bills, birthdays, in-laws, that's work too. It just doesn't come with a paycheck. When Sophie became a teenager, things shifted. She stopped coming to me. Locked herself in her room, laughed with her father at dinner. With me, it was always rush. "Mom, you just don't get it. That's not how things work anymore. Can you please just let me talk to Dad?" At first, I thought it was just teenage angst. But it didn't pass. It got worse. Rob never stood up for me. He only reinforced her distance with snide little jokes. "See, Maggie. That's why she talks to me. You're always so sensitive." I began to feel like a guest in my own home. I planned every holiday meal, but was never part of the toast. I was there for every scraped knee, every sleepless night. But when Sophie needed advice, she called her dad. I felt invisible. But I stayed. Because that's what a good wife and mother does, even if it means disappearing completely. Then came the divorce. Rob met someone at work. A dynamic, modern woman who understood his ideas. He broke the news like he was apologizing for spilling coffee. I'm not trying to hurt you, Maggie. I just think our time has passed. Life moves on. And his life really did move on. Within a month, they were living together. What hurt the most wasn't the betrayal. It was how casually Sophie accepted it. Dad has a right to be happy too, Mom. Stop being so dramatic. And that's when something inside me cracked. That year's Christmas came cold, both outside and within. It was the first holiday after the divorce, and foolishly, I still expected something. A gesture. An invitation. Why don't you come spend it with us, Mom? What I got was a short message on December 24th at 11 a.m. Hey Mom, we're doing a little Christmas dinner here with Dad and Claire. You don't have to come, I'll bring your gift later this week. Merry Christmas. I sat in my living room armchair, staring at the tree I decorated alone. Ornaments filled with decades of memories twinkled beneath blinking lights. But the house was silent. The gift I had wrapped for Sophie still sat under the tree. A handmade lavender scarf, her favorite color since childhood. Instead of cooking a feast, I made something simple. I ate alone. Had a glass of wine. Then wrapped myself in a blanket and sat on the porch. My legs warm, my heart heavy. Then my phone buzzed. An Instagram post. Sophie's dinner table. She, Rob, and Claire, raising glasses beside a wooden nativity. The caption read, "Home is where love lives. Our little Christmas miracle." In the center of the table, I spotted my old gold candle holder. The one that belonged to my grandmother. The one I left at Rob's house because he said it matched the decor. Now it was lighting another woman's holiday. Claire wore the sweater I had gifted Sophie last winter. Rob beamed like he'd never broken a vow. And my daughter smiled like I'd never existed. The pain was so sharp I had to brace my elbows on my knees. But instead of collapsing, something inside me cleared. There it was, my absence being celebrated as convenience. My exclusion dressed up as evolution. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I stood up. Walked inside. Opened the drawer and pulled out the divorce papers Rob once asked me to reconsider, for closure. I signed every page. Then I picked up my phone. Typed a message to my lawyer, Martha. Good evening, Martha. Please find the signed documents attached. From now on, any communication with Rob should go through your office. I'd also like to start reorganizing my assets. I'm ready to move forward. Alone. And, for the first time, in peace. I clicked send. Closed the laptop. Walked to the tree. Carefully, I picked up Sophie's gift. Untied the ribbon. Folded the scarf. Put it back in the box. Then I walked to the porch and tossed it into the fire pit. The smell of burning wool wasn't sad. It was liberating. The next morning, I booked a train to Vermont. For days in a secluded cabin, just me, my books, and a real fireplace. No obligations. No masks. No waiting. At the bottom of my suitcase, I packed just one photo. A picture of me at 30, smiling by the sea, full of dreams. Because it was her I needed to find again. The trip to Vermont was short. But it changed everything. The cabin was simple, surrounded by tall pine trees and deep, soft snow. No cell signal. And for the first time in years, silence didn't scare me. I slept most of the first 2 days. Read on the third. And on the fourth. I cried. Not for any one thing. Maybe for everything. That night, by the fire, chamomile tea in hand, I opened a journal and wrote. What have I stopped doing for myself? Who was I before I became Rob's wife? What would I do if I weren't afraid? My answers came slowly, but honestly. I would start writing again. I would open a small bookstore with a cafe in the back. I would give myself permission to live without asking first. It sounded childish. Naive. But only because I'd spent decades convinced that dreams belonged to the young. Back home, I got to work. I called a realtor to appraise the apartment, a modest inheritance from my parents. Sorted the belongings I truly wanted. Donated the rest. Updated my resume, even knowing no one was waiting to hire a 61-year-old literature graduate. And the following weekend, I enrolled in an online creative writing course. You don't have to do this alone, Martha said on the phone. I know someone who can help. That's how I met Eleanor Stein, a retired editor from Chicago, friend of Martha's. We spoke over video call. Silver bun, steady tone, kind eyes. You'd be amazed at how many women start over after 60, Maggie. Some of the best stories I've ever read didn't come from young voices, but from women like you, with scars, losses, and truth. She invited me to a small online writing group that met every Thursday. I said yes. But the challenges didn't stop. When Sophie found out I was selling the apartment, she sent a voice message. Mom, why are you doing this? Are you okay financially? Are you really moving into a rental? That doesn't make sense. You have a family, remember? I took a deep breath before answering. I remember, Sophie. I also remember being invisible in that family. She didn't reply. The following week, Rob tried to call. Said he missed our friendship. I blocked him. Judgmental stares from neighbors. 3 a.m. doubts. Sophie's messages growing colder and shorter. Still. I kept going. And everything shifted one Tuesday morning when I opened an email from Eleanor. Subject, bookstore available, can you believe it? A small corner space in Beacon Hill, Boston. Vacant for 2 years. Tall windows. Aged wooden shelves. A faded sign on the door. Read. Feel. Begin again. My heart raced. The real obstacle wasn't money. It was fear. But for the first time in decades, I was ready to face it. The first time I stepped into the old bookstore, something inside me sparked. The space was dusty, filled with the scent of damp wood and forgotten pages. But there was light. Literally, giant windows welcomed the sun as if it too wanted to start over with me. I signed the lease that same day. The rent was affordable. My parents had left me a modest fund Rob never knew existed. I used part of the apartment sale to renovate, and saved the rest for emergencies. The renovation was slow but meaningful. I painted the walls in soft lavender and cream, the same colors I once used in Sophie's nursery. But this time, I painted them for me. On the old shelves, I placed women's classics, survivor memoirs, stories of reinvention. On one wall, I hung an embroidered phrase my mother made years ago. Be the place your own heart longs to live. And in that small bookstore, with the smell of fresh coffee and new pages, I began to rebuild myself. I named the space Chapter 2. Every morning, I opened the door with coffee in hand and courage I never knew I had. At the back, I set up a tiny cafe, simple muffins, herbal teas, slow-brewed coffee. The first week, I sold only 3 books. 2 of them to an older lady who said, The name's just too cute not to buy something. But I was there. And no one could take that from me. Every Thursday, I joined Eleanor's writing group. Shared short stories inspired by my own life. One night, Eleanor messaged me directly. You should publish this piece, Maggie. There are women out there who need your voice. I wrote it by hand. Cried. Erased. Rewrote. And finally submitted. A letter to the woman still living in the background. Over 300 messages followed. Women saying they'd finally filed for divorce. Mothers reconnecting with their kids. One message said, "You put into words what I didn't even know I was feeling. Thank you for existing." And in that sentence, I knew. My story had a purpose. But not everything was poetry. Sophie remained distant. Only responded with emojis. Never commented on any bookstore post. One night, she sent a voice message, her tone bitter. "So now you're some kind of guru for abandoned women. You really think people care about your failed marriage?" I didn't respond. Because I realized then, she was still wrestling with her own demons. And I was no longer her emotional cushion. The woman I was becoming didn't apologize for existing. She wrote. She sold books. She learned about taxes and inventory. She poured coffee for elderly women who came back every week just to say, "This place feels like a hug." And one of them, June, gave me the greatest compliment of my life. "Your shop feels like a hug." And Maggie, some of us haven't felt hugged in years.
It was a rainy Tuesday when the past walked in. Literally. I was setting up a new display for indie women authors when I heard the chime of the door. I turned, and there he was, Rob. Same Christmas wool coat, soaked. Same polite mask worn like a charm. "Maggie," he said, forcing a smile. "This place looks beautiful. Really." I closed the book in my hand and looked him straight in the eye. "What do you want, Rob?" He sighed dramatically, ran a hand through his wet hair like a scene from a movie. "I just wanted to talk. About Sophie. About us." My stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. "There is no us, Rob. And Sophie is an adult." He hesitated, not expecting me to be so cold. But then, he switched to the script he'd clearly practiced in the car. "Look, things didn't work out with Claire. She's not who I thought she was. And Sophie's struggling at work. She's lost, Maggie. We've all made mistakes. Maybe it's time to..." "To what?" My voice was low, but sharp. "Time to pretend none of it happened. That I wasn't erased from my own family for years?" He stepped back slightly. "You're being dramatic again, like always." "Stop right there. That word, dramatic, was your favorite weapon. You used it to dismiss every feeling I ever had. Now it only reminds me that you haven't changed." He tried again, guilt painted across his voice. "Sophie needs you." "She's broken, Maggie." "So was I, and no one offered me a hand." "But you're stronger." I smiled. "Exactly. That's why she'll have to learn to stand on her own." He looked at me like I'd peeled off the mask he wore so comfortably. And then, almost pathetically, "Can't we at least have coffee? Talk like old times. Rob, I sell coffee. I don't share it with ghosts." He left without another word. 2 days later, Sophie showed up. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Messy hair. Grocery bag in hand. Guilt on her face. "Hey Mom, can we talk?" I didn't respond immediately. Just pointed to a table at the back. She sat down like a child who knew she'd done something wrong. "I lost my job. Claire left. Dad's a mess. I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked. "I've been awful. I said things I shouldn't have. I treated you like an obligation. And you didn't deserve that. No, I didn't, I replied. Silence. But you're still my mom, she tried. That's not a free pass, Sophie. She started to cry. Truly cry. Please. Let me stay with you for a few days. I'll figure it out. I promise. There's a B&B 3 blocks from here. It's clean, safe, includes breakfast. I'll even cover the first night. You won't let me stay with you? Not yet. I'm still learning how to live with myself, without being interrupted, diminished, or dismissed. And this space took me too long to claim. She stayed there, crying, but didn't move. And I didn't hug her. Because sometimes, the most loving thing a mother can do is teach her daughter not to repeat the mistake of disrespecting other women, or herself.
A year after that lonely Christmas, Chapter 2 had become more than a bookstore. It was a sanctuary. A disguised emotional refuge in the form of coffee and pages. A community where women of all ages sat, read, vented, restarted. There was Diane, 74, who wrote letters to her future self. Mina, an Indian immigrant selling her artisanal teas in the corner. A writing club of grandmothers who met every Monday. They called themselves the Rebellious. And there was me. Maggie. Not Rob's Maggie. Not Sophie's mother. Just Maggie. Waking early. Folding napkins gently. Editing stories. Reading messages from readers saying, "You gave me courage." I went back to school. I opened my own business. I walked away. On my second Christmas post-divorce, I received a surprise call. It was Sophie. "Hi, Mom. I know I'm not invited. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. And I hope you're okay." Her voice was hesitant. But honest. "I'm more than okay," I said, softly smiling. She was quiet for a moment. Then added, "I read your last piece. The one about the woman who walked out of her kitchen and found her name in the stars. I think that's who I want to be." Tears came, this time, from pride. "Then start walking, Sophie. And this time, do it for you." We hung up in peace. That night, I sat alone at the table. But I wasn't lonely. There were flowers a reader had dropped off. A cake Diane had brought earlier. A note from Mina with a poem by Rumi. "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." I looked around the bookstore, the golden light, the reader photos on the wall with quotes like, "My second beginning. I finally chose myself. Freedom tastes like fresh coffee and lavender paint." And I thought, this is why it was all worth it. It's not about revenge. Or proving anyone wrong. It's about finally seeing yourself, and never letting that vision go again. I raised my glass of sparkling wine. Alone. But in peace. With myself. With the world. With the woman I had finally decided to become. If you're still here, take a deep breath. Because maybe this isn't just Maggie's story. Maybe it's yours, too. And if it is, know that it's never too late to start over and build a life where you are the main character. Want more emotional stories like this one? Subscribe to her journey, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, which part of this story touched you the most? Your voice deserves to be heard too.